Hey everybody, hope you're surviving the coronavirus. As I sit to make this video, I learned recently two things entered my thoughts at the same time. One was that I got into this kind of pattern of went from watching Watch Mojo videos to watching Miss Mojo videos, which Miss Mojo videos are obviously their countdown videos for a female audience. And um, as I was watching that, I noticed how a lot of their countdowns would be for the best romantic comedy of all time, the best romantic drama of all time, the best on-screen couple of all time, the best forbidden love of all time, and all these romance things. And what would happen, of course, is it got to a point where they were just repackaging the same like 20 some odd movies again and again, just reordering them. And so you would see very predictably Love Actually and Pretty Woman and When Harry Met Sally and just these kind of in The Notebook and just these kind of very predictable movies that kept coming up and up and up over and over again. And I thought about that, and it was occurring to me that I think the most recent of these movies that they keep picking from was Baz Luhrmann's 2013 interpretation of The Great Gatsby. But even that is just a reinterpretation of something that came out many moons ago. And so it started occurring to me that there's not really any good romance coming out of cinema anymore. This is no longer, that there are at best, there was a time when my Netflix recommendations blew up with a bunch of comedy dramas about women discovering lesbianism, and I think that's just because I gave thumbs up to Blue is the Warmest Color, but and certainly not for the reasons that the filmmakers intended. But in any event, you know, it seems like just the standard classic pairing of man and woman and the ongoing examination of that has fallen out of favor in popular discourse. The subject, if it is approached at all, is usually approached with bitterness, with cynicism. You had the recent Adam Driver movie that really taps into the kind of decay of a relationship and that sort of thing. And we don't see these movies anymore that are just about the joy and the wonderment and the passion and the beauty of two people falling in love. And, you know, romance being a topic that I, like most neurotypical behavior, observe more frequently from the outside than the inside, it was concerning to me and disheartening that we're not seeing this. We're not seeing this most, I think, most beautiful and most sacred of social processes being analyzed and exemplified like it used to be. And this really came to a head. I've been thinking about making this video for a while now, but this really came to a head when I found out that the Mulan remake is not going to have Li Shang. Now, I had heard, I've not confirmed this, but I've heard rumor that the Mulan remake will not feature any of the songs, and uh, I'm sorry, I am not going to pay to see anything that has the Mulan name on it if it does not have a performance of "I'll Make a Man Out of You." But in general, I don't see remakes because I don't want to. The one exception being the upcoming Final Fantasy VII remake. I'm very excited about that. But in general, I don't want to patronize things that are just rehashings of things that, in most cases, in my mind, were done right the first time. I think Aladdin did not need a remake. Beauty and the Beast did not need a remake. The Lion King did not need a remake. All of those are classics. And apparently we have The Little Mermaid coming up. I don't think that needs a remake. And I am among the people who says that who believes, I'm sorry, Ariel is a ginger and she needs to stay that way. But we won't get into that. And I don't, like I said, I don't have any intention of patronizing the sequels or the remakes anyway. But Mulan was the one that I was really excited about. That was the one I had the most potential for seeing, even without the songs. To be, I mean, humor aside, even without the songs, I was really interested in seeing it because I love Asian cinema and I love the look and the aesthetic of traditional Asian cultures, whether that's Chinese or Japanese. I'm just absolutely fascinated. There's like one of the best movies ever made, in my opinion, is The Last Emperor. You should go see that. It's the movie about the last emperor of China. And it's the only movie that's ever been shot in China's Forbidden City, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It is stunningly gorgeous. Just you want to inhabit that world when you see. You just want to be in that world. And as I've said before, I have a very strong kind of spiritual connection to some of these Asiatic cultures. It's just naturally I've been drawn to that. And so the Mulan remake was one that I was really interested to see, also because Mulan, outstanding among the Disney movies, Mulan and Pocahontas were the ones that I did not see as a kid. I saw as an adult, and so I feel like I got to appreciate them in a very different way. Pocahontas has this very dreamlike quality that I think is not readily apparent if you see it as a kid. And Mulan, seeing that, I was really impressed with how engrossing it was for me as an adult and really brought me back to that classic kind of sense of Disney wonderment that we all have, that we all experienced growing up, in a way that movies like Frozen did not. And I enjoyed Frozen okay, but Frozen just didn't have that certain je ne sais quoi of the classic Disney Renaissance period that I grew up with. So I was excited about Mulan, and then I heard something that is just such absolute bullshit that it's one of those things where I'm going to vote with my pocketbook and I'm not going to go see the movie, and that is that it was recently revealed that Li Shang will not be making an appearance in the film. What they've done, and Li Shang, if you don't know, is the commanding officer of Mulan's battalion, who ultimately they fall in love and happily ever after, yada yada, following some marital squabbles in Mulan 2, but we won't go there. Anyway, they fall in love happily ever after, the whole spiel. And it's a great on-screen duo and a great on-screen pairing, even in just as animation. The characters have chemistry. Li Shang is an immensely appealing character. He strikes a wonderful balance between he's very much that officer and a gentleman kind of character, where he strikes a balance between the raw brutality of war and the noble, honorific dignity of a military commander. He's a very appealing character. I heard, by the way, one idiotic thing. People have been referring to him as a bisexual icon. He is not bisexual. He finds himself having feelings for one person who turns out to be a woman. Anyway, that off the table. The reason that was given for kicking Li Shang out of the Mulan remake was that Disney felt, in the wake of the #MeToo movement, it was very irresponsible to show a scenario in which a commanding officer falls in love or has a relationship of some kind with one of his subordinates. And that really worries me, because here's the thing: we need to start but we're not going back to anything, but we need to rediscover the balance between understanding how you should act in reality versus how characters interact in movies. And that it's the same thing that happens, the same effect that happens in Star Wars with the whole Han shot first controversy. George Lucas says he wants Han to shoot first he wants Guido to shoot first because he wanted younger viewers to understand that Han had no choice but to shoot, which is ridiculous because the whole point of the scene is to establish Han as a merciless anti-hero. And also, it's completely ridiculous that Guido fires at point-blank range and misses. But anyway, it's that same kind of thing where to teach a little Sunday school lesson to the impressionable young viewers, we lose out on these great, wonderful moments in cinema. And certainly in the sweeping, grandiose epic of the Mulan remake, the love between Li Shang and Mulan would have portrayed beautifully on the big screen in live action. And what they're doing is they're replacing the characters with an older military commander and a man in Mulan, another soldier in Mulan's troop that is going to be the one she falls in love with. So they're splitting up the character into two parts. And the thing is, we have reached a point, I think, in society where we have so sanitized human relations to the point that we live in a world that is devoid of passion. We live in a world that is devoid of joy and beauty. It's like the standard for male to female interaction now has gotten down to, we all saw the the Gillette, the woke Gillette ad. I won't summarize it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But yeah, but we all saw that ad, and there is a scene in there where one of this man sees a woman walking down the street, and he goes to talk to her with the intention of apparently of hitting on her, and his buddy stops him like, "Whoa, man, that's not cool." And it worries me that has become the standard, that we don't even have we no longer have an acceptable concept of men pursuing women, even though by and large that's how the process begins. And we have lost that in cinema, and we continue to we're sacrificing romance and love on the altar of political correctness. And the reality of it, the thing of it is, she's discovered going outside, so just bear with me, try to put up with it. Anyway, the thing of it is, love does not happen. Love is not easy, and it's not simple, and it doesn't fit into politically correct boundaries. It's confusing, and speech gets confused, and people slip up, and they do weird things and difficult things, and it gets difficult to understand and difficult to process, and hierarchies are transgressed, and people have to step out of their normal roles, and things get complicated. And if you want to talk about responsibility, I think what's more responsible is to show two people figuring out how to navigate this dichotomy, this imbalance of power, rather than just scurrying away from it altogether. And so, bearing that in mind, I feel like we're losing something very beautiful and something very important. I think about, as loath as I am to bring him up, Full Macintosh did a video on Harrison Ford movies a while back, and he picked out Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Empire Strikes Back, and Blade Runner as examples of this character that this recurring character that Harrison Ford plays, which is this very roguish, cocksure, sort of arrogant leading man that kind of whisks the woman off of her feet. And he points out these problematic aspects with the character. Now, I would actually argue with including Blade Runner in that lineup, because I think the character of Rick Deckard is a remarkably different character from the other two. He is not a grinning leading man whose presence is meant to be a throwback to the Clark Gable Hollywood of yesteryear. That is a very dark, hard-boiled, alcoholic character who, yes, this is a whole side argument, but there's a lot of controversy in that about the scene where he is very violent with Rachel in their kind of love scene and all that. And it's like, you have to remember, this is a man who is trained to kill is trained to kill machines. He says a replicant's like any other machine at the beginning of the movie. He's trained to kill machines, and now and he knows that this machine that he is making himself vulnerable to physically and emotionally can snap his neck at a moment's notice. Of course, it's this. There are like 50 different things going through his head at one time. Rachel is not a literal human woman. I mean, anyway, but again, Full Macintosh being a prime example of the kind of child who enjoyed the playground on a leash and a harness. We see in his example of Indiana Jones and Han Solo, these characters, these are comparable types of characters. These two, you have this grinning, arrogant rogue, this handsome rake that is pursuing after these women. In the case of Kate Capshaw's character in Indiana Jones, and then of course Princess Leia. Wow, old. Anyway, Princess Leia in Empire Strikes Back. These two characters, they are both very haughty, stuck-up, aristocratic women who look down their noses. Who view these men as fundamentally beneath them, and so the dance of their interplay is her being very spiteful and dismissive and sassy towards him, and him, shaking it off and continuing to be a smirking, arrogant prick, and they ultimately kind of needle at each other until they fall into their love for one another, and they give over to their actual feelings. And Full Macintosh presents this as being somehow problematic, and it's like, look, John, these movies are not intended to teach middle school students how to ask each other out on dates. They're intended to show the intricate and subtle beauty that is male and female interactions, and that there's a book. The title is perfect, The Dance of Intimacy. I mean, that's what it is. It is that we take 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. We sass at each other, and then we give a little bit, and we are a little angry, and then we're a little giving, and it takes time, and this rapport builds up with both positive and negative behavior. It's not just an endless barrage of, "Hello, do you want to go out with me? Yes, I do. Let us put on our raincoats and bring 10 chaperones each." It's like it is this difficult, subtle process that goes back and forth, and there are moments of antagonism and moments of giving way, and I feel like we are losing that, and the real message that we're sending to people. I hate to say young people, but I'm getting to the age where I can. The real message that we're sending to young people, it seems like, is don't even try. Don't even try to get into relationships. Don't even toe the waters of relationships, because it's all too impossible. You'll never understand it. You'll never figure it out. Just stay back, stay away, and do everything in your power to make sure that you never transgress in any way, shape, or form. And to really highlight my concern, I give you an example. One of, this is a true story. About 100 years ago, about 80 some odd, more than 80 years ago, but thereabouts, somewhere in that range, because it's very obvious what the number should be, but I just can't be bothered to do math right now. In the years leading up to World War II, there was a young man named Jack who took the bus every day to get to college. And when he was on that bus, he noticed that every day there was this cute girl named Catherine who worked at the local dime store. And she would get on the bus he saw her get on the bus every day, and he just thought she was the cutest thing ever. And he went over, finally one day, sat down next to her and introduced himself, and she just told him to buzz off. And he said, "Hey, don't be like that." And she softened, and they started talking and talking, and eventually they got married. And that marriage lasted for over 50 years, and it produced 3 children, the middle of which was my dad. So, when I hear about this, my question becomes: yes, we have to navigate boundaries, and we have to understand people's boundaries, and we have to, in real life, yes, respect people's boundaries. But we also have to have this passion for living, and this desire for living, and this desire to convince another person that we're worthy of their time, that does not fit into this neat little box. And so that's the worry that I have, that, in the story I just told about my grandparents, it's like, if he had been perfectly playing by the woke generation playbook, which obviously had not even was, about 70 or 80 years prior to being written at this point, uh, if he had done, if he had played by those rules, I wouldn't exist, which I'm sure would be, music to the ears of a lot of people. But nevertheless, we have to we have to have the boundaries, and then a reasonable respect for the gray area, a reasonable understanding of, hey, I need to go a little bit further to show you that I'm worth your time. And there will always be people who, or the gray area where we say, hey, I'm sorry, I was just trying to impress you. I didn't mean to go so far outside the color, so far outside the lines. Have a nice day. But we need to have this gray area where, yes, a military commander falls in love with his subordinate, and yes, that's fraternizing, but my God, it creates this beautiful on-screen chemistry that makes us passionate and happy and want to be alive. And it's just so bizarre to me that male-female coupling, the social process that is most critical to maintaining the species, and for most people, critical to their happiness, has become so touchy and so taboo that we dare not portray it on screen. Or if we do, we portray it in very, very inside the lines, uninteresting, acceptable terms. That really worries me. I keep saying that. I keep ending my videos now with that comment. But one of the things I'm noticing, and I want to do a video similar to this one about popular music, but one of the things I'm noticing is that joy and passion and innovation and daring and boldness has left popular culture. And certainly with regards to romance in movies. I mentioned An Officer and a Gentleman as an archetype earlier, but I watched that movie recently, within the last year recently, and I had never seen it before. I just happened to have seen it for the first time this past year, and I was watching it. I was watching Richard Gere and Deborah Winger have this beautiful on-screen, on-screen chemistry, and I just thought, this seems, just the very concept of men and women falling in love seems retro. It seems like, it's like, oh yeah, it's like bell bottoms and roller skating, roller rinks. It's like, oh yeah, we used to do that. And it's weird. It's weird to think that. We're in this just bizarre upside down world where it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm pro-gay marriage, pro-gay rights, but it's like homosexuality is sacrosanct, and heterosexuality is this this minefield that we approach tenderly, if at all. Just this weird, bizarre, upside down world. Anyway, hopefully I've made some sense.